All right, folks, buckle up. We're diving headfirst into some seriously wild stuff today. We're talking organic cyborgs, like straight out of science fiction. You guys sent in some truly fascinating accounts, firsthand experiences from folks who've gone through hypnotic regressions. And let me tell you, some of these stories are mind-blowing.
It's incredible, isn't it? These accounts, while we got to approach them with healthy skepticism, of course, seem to offer a glimpse into a world where biology and technology just kind of meld together.
Totally. So today, we're putting on our detective hats. We're going to sift through these hypnotic regression transcripts, look for common threads, any intriguing details, those nuggets that might just hint at the possibility of organic cyborgs actually existing.
And while we do that, it's important to remember that, well, hypnotic regression isn't a perfect window to the past. Memories can be tricky, sometimes influenced, right? So context is key.
Absolutely. We're keeping our critical thinking caps on, that's for sure. But here's where things get really interesting. A lot of these accounts, they share a common theme when it comes to how these organic cyborgs are put together.
Right. The consistency is definitely something to note. Many describe this humanoid form, but with this blend of biological and artificial components. It's intriguing and honestly a little unsettling.
Or totally. For example, you've got several people describing cyborgs with skin that looks incredibly realistic, like almost too real. But underneath, there's this whole network of metal structures, internal mechanisms, circuitry. It's like a human shell with a machine hiding inside.
It is. And it gets even more specific. One person described a cyborg with a spine that alternated between metal and bone, connected by, get this, intricate nanotechnology.
Nanotechnology, I mean, that's cutting-edge stuff even today. To think it could be used to create cyborgs, that's wild.
It is wild. And another account, they talked about fingers tipped with metallic thimbles, linked by wires, capable of independent movement, like miniature robotic fingers almost.
Okay, that's both super cool and kind of creepy. Imagine shaking someone's hand and their fingers just start moving on their own.
Right. Raises questions about, well, the level of control these cyborgs might have over their own bodies and who or what is really pulling the strings, so to speak.
Exactly. And speaking of control, one account mentioned a cyborg with a transparent capsule in its chest and inside, a pulsating, warm liquid described as, get this, living water. What do you make of that? It's almost mystical.
Hard to say without more context, maybe advanced bio-nanotechnology, an artificial circulatory system, but unlike anything we've seen before, who knows?
It's definitely one of those details that makes you go, there's something more to this.
Definitely. It highlights the strangeness and complexity of these accounts for sure. Reminds us that we're dealing with human perception, memory, and potentially technology beyond what we currently understand.
Absolutely. So we've got a sense of what these organic cyborgs might look like, but how are they made? The transcripts give us some clues, and it sounds like a fusion of some seriously advanced technologies.
Yeah, a lot of folks mention things like 3D printing, the use of advanced plastics, even methods for growing organic material on artificial structures.
It's like they're taking the best of both worlds.
Mm.
The precision of machines and the adaptability of living things, right? What's interesting is one person even brought up 5G technology, though it wasn't clear how it was involved.
That's a head scratcher, isn't it? I mean, we mostly associate 5G with communication networks, so its role in cyborg creation isn't immediately obvious. Definitely warrants further exploration.
For sure. Another session talked about something called biostructured amyloid. Imagine this, a transparent blue solution with luminescent lighting, and slowly a human-like structure starts forming inside. It's like they're growing these cyborgs in a lab.
A very vivid image, yeah. And it makes you wonder, are they building these beings from scratch or somehow modifying existing humans?
Okay, that's a chilling thought. I mean, we've got the body down, but what about the brain? That's what really makes us human, right?
Right, and that's where things get really mind-boggling. These accounts consistently describe this hybrid brain, human-like structure, but with these artificial enhancements. It's like they're taking the human brain and giving it a technological upgrade.
Wow, that's intense. One person described a cyborg's brain as being partially encased in a capsule with artificial neurons connected to it. Makes you wonder about the limits of human-machine integration.
Absolutely. Another fascinating detail was this idea of a matrix within the brain. Think of it as a system where data is written, processed, almost like a computer, controlling the cyborg's movements, actions, everything.
Hold on, so they're programmed,
Yeah.
like with preset responses, behaviors. Does that mean they have any free will? Or are they just sophisticated puppets?
That's the big question, isn't it? The transcripts don't exactly give us a clear answer, but you have this tension between their human-like appearance and their, well, potentially programmed nature.
It's a little unsettling, yeah. One person even described a brain where specific zones could be activated by external stimuli, triggering these pre-programmed responses. It's like push a button, get a predictable reaction.
Raises concerns about autonomy and control, for sure. Who's calling the shots? And what happens if that control falls into the wrong hands?
These are heavy questions, I'm feeling that. One thing the transcripts do suggest is that creating these cyborgs, it takes time. Like anywhere from 3 to 4 months, maybe more, depending on the model's complexity.
That's a significant amount of time. Suggests it's not a simple assembly process. It's this carefully orchestrated merging of biological and artificial components.
Makes you wonder if it takes that long to create just one.
Yeah.
How many of these things could be out there already?
That's a question we'll definitely need to explore further. But before we get ahead of ourselves, let's talk about what these cyborgs are actually being used for. And some of the possibilities, especially the military applications, are, well, pretty unsettling.
Yeah, the transcripts consistently mention this idea of using cyborgs for military purposes, creating these super soldiers, essentially. Formidable and expendable. It's like something out of Terminator, you know?
Right. One person described seeing them being used in space exploration, able to operate in those harsh environments like open space. Another one described them as guards in high-security military facilities, replacing traditional security. It paints a pretty stark picture of the future of warfare.
Chilling stuff. And it's not just the battlefield where we might see these beings. The transcripts suggest they could become part of our everyday lives, integrated into all sorts of sectors of society.
Yes, exactly. Like manual labor, for example, working in factories, on farms, anywhere that requires constant work, without the need for breaks. It raises questions about the future of work, the potential for human workers to be replaced.
Imagine a workforce that never sleeps, never complains, never needs a vacation. It's impressive, but also kind of terrifying. What happens to human connection, empathy, in a world where machines are doing all the work?
That's a crucial question. Another possible application mentioned in the transcripts is service roles, like caregivers for the elderly or folks with disabilities. Seems positive on the surface, but it raises ethical dilemmas.
Yeah, like, can a machine truly provide the care and compassion that humans need? And what happens to the human connection, the essential human element of those roles?
Big questions to consider, for sure. And perhaps the most disturbing possibility raised in the transcripts, the idea of using cyborgs to replace deceased individuals, especially public figures, to maintain societal stability.
Wait, hold on. Like, creating cyborg clones of world leaders, celebrities, that sounds like something out of a conspiracy theory.
It does, doesn't it? But with the advancements in AI and robotics, it's not entirely outside the realm of possibility. Raises questions about authenticity, identity, the potential for manipulation.
Okay, that's just creepy. But let's shift gears for a second. One of the transcripts mentioned this Eternal Youth project. It focuses on using cyborg technology for, like, longevity, reversing the aging process, that kind of thing.
Right, the Eternal Youth Project. Perhaps the most, tantalizing and ethically complex aspect of these accounts. It hints at a future where death isn't a certainty, at least not for those who can afford it.
It's fascinating, isn't it? People living for centuries, bodies constantly being repaired and rejuvenated by cyborg tech. But it also makes you think about access, fairness, the potential for a society divided by lifespan.
Absolutely. It's a classic example of how advancements in science can offer incredible opportunities and potential dangers at the same time. The question is, are we prepared to handle that power?
Big questions, for sure.
Okay.
We've covered a lot here. Cyborgs in the military, cyborgs caring for the elderly, cyborgs potentially living forever. It's a lot to process.
It is, and it's important to remember that we're working with accounts from hypnotic regression sessions, so healthy skepticism and critical thinking are key.
Absolutely. But let's say, just for a moment, that these organic cyborgs are real. How would we even know if we encountered one? What are the signs?
Well, some of the transcripts do offer some clues. Their movements, for example. They're designed to mimic human behavior, but there might be something a little off about them.
Like a robot trying too hard to act human.
Exactly. Their movements might lack that natural fluidity, the grace we see in humans. Another giveaway could be their eyes. Cyborgs are often described as having this odd or vacant look, with an unusual blink rate.
So if someone's staring at me with a 1,000-yard stare and blinking like a broken robot, I should be suspicious.
Well, it's not quite that simple, but yeah, unusual eye behavior could be a red flag. And their eyes, they might not show signs of fatigue, redness like we see in humans.
Right. If you don't need sleep, you probably don't get tired eyes. Makes sense.
Another clue could be their skin. Described as realistic, but it might feel unusually cold, lacking the warmth of, well, a living person, and then there's the potential lack of blood.
Oh, right. If they're mostly machine, they wouldn't bleed the same way. Some transcripts mentioned this black, inky fluid as a substitute. Others said no fluid at all.
A detail that really speaks to their artificial nature, their difference from us.
Okay, I'm officially creeped out. This is like straight out of a sci-fi thriller.
It is a fascinating and somewhat unsettling thought experiment, that's for sure. But remember, we're talking about speculative possibilities based on anecdotal evidence.
Right, right. Always good to keep a level head. But gotta admit, this whole deep dive is really making me wonder, could organic cyborgs already be among us? And if so, what does that mean for humanity?
Those are questions we'll keep exploring in the next part of our deep dive.
Stay tuned, folks, because this mystery's just getting started.
Welcome back to our exploration of organic cyborgs. You know, before we go any further, that thing we were talking about last time, cyborgs as soldiers operating in space, I mean, that really highlights how this technology could just redefine what we think of as human limitations.
Totally. It's like we're pushing the boundaries of what's even possible, blurring the lines between human and machine in ways we never even thought of before.
Mhm.
But it's not just space exploration, right? We were talking about how these cyborgs could be integrated into everyday life, and some of those possibilities, I don't know, they raise some ethical concerns that we can't just ignore.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Like the use of cyborgs as caregivers, it came up a lot in those hypnotic regression sessions, taking care of the elderly, people with disabilities. On the surface, it sounds like a pretty good solution to a growing problem,
Yeah.
but it makes you wonder, can a machine really provide the empathy and emotional support that's so important in those roles?
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, we usually think of caregiving as this deeply human thing, you know?
Yeah.
It requires understanding, compassion, a connection that goes beyond just doing tasks.
Exactly. And while artificial intelligence is getting more advanced all the time, we're still a long way from creating machines that can truly replicate human empathy. So it raises questions about what we might lose, what we might sacrifice if we start relying too heavily on technology in these really sensitive areas of life.
Yeah, definitely something to think about. We also talked about cyborgs being used as laborers,
Yes, right.
doing jobs that are dangerous, repetitive, or just require a level of stamina that humans just don't have.
Right. Imagine a workforce that never gets tired, never complains, never needs a break. It's a scenario that could really shake things up,
Right.
economically, socially, big changes.
Yeah, huge implications. It's almost like we're heading towards a future where human workers are, I don't know, obsolete, replaced by an army of super efficient machines that never stop. What happens to the people who are displaced, and what does it mean for us, our sense of purpose, our identity, if our jobs are all taken over by machines?
Those are big questions. And there are ones that we need to start grappling with, like now. As a society, we need to figure this out. The benefits of automation are definitely there, but we have to make sure those benefits are shared, that we don't end up creating a world where technology just makes existing inequalities even worse.
Yeah, for sure. It's a complex issue, that's for sure. No easy answers. Speaking of complex issues, let's go back to one of the more unsettling possibilities from the transcripts. The idea of using cyborgs to replace people who have died, particularly those in positions of power.
Yeah, the whole cyborg duplicate thing, world leaders, influential figures, it's intriguing, but it's also pretty disturbing when you think about it. It raises questions about, I don't know, what's real, what's authentic, the nature of leadership, the potential for things to get manipulated on a massive scale.
Right, it's like imagine a world where death isn't even a certainty anymore, at least not for the people at the top. It could completely change the power dynamics, create a society where the same people stay in control for, I don't know, decades, centuries even.
Yeah, it could have huge consequences for democracy, social mobility, even our whole concept of what it means to be human, to be mortal.
A lot to think about. It's clear we're just starting to scratch the surface here, all these ethical and philosophical questions surrounding this technology. But before we get too lost to the big picture, maybe we could circle back to some of the more, I don't know, intriguing details that came up in those hypnotic regressions.
Ah, yes, those little nuggets that make this whole topic so fascinating. What caught your eye?
Well, I'm still thinking about that living water thing, the pulsating liquid in the cyborg's chest. What could that be?
It's a mystery, for sure. Maybe it's symbolic, representing the cyborg as this blend of organic and artificial. Or maybe there's a practical explanation, some kind of advanced bio-nanofluid essential for the cyborg to function.
It's almost like they're trying to create something that's not just a machine, but a whole new form of life.
That's a really interesting thought. It really challenges our understanding of what it means to be alive, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And remember that other detail? Kind of a creepy one, the black, inky fluid that some cyborgs supposedly use as a blood substitute.
Oh, yeah, that's a curious one. Lots of possible interpretations. Maybe it's purely functional, just a synthetic fluid that carries oxygen and nutrients. Or maybe it's symbolic, representing the cyborg's artificial nature, how it's different from us.
It definitely adds to that whole unsettling vibe, like they're both familiar and alien at the same time.
Exactly. And that brings us back to another one of those intriguing details, the connection between cyborg creation and 5G technology.
Yeah, that one still has me stumped.
Hmm?
What could 5G possibly have to do with building a cyborg?
It's a tough one. Maybe it's just a misunderstanding, The subject's under hypnosis misinterpreting some complex technical information.
Or could be there's something deeper going on? Maybe 5G isn't just about communication. Maybe it plays a role in, I don't know, controlling these cyborgs, powering them even.
It's definitely a possibility. We're talking about technology that could be way beyond anything we understand right now.
It's like trying to put together a puzzle, but with some of the pieces missing. We're getting these glimpses of a reality that's just beyond our reach.
That's the allure of the unknown, isn't it? The desire to understand, to make sense of the world, even when it seems to defy logic and reason.
Yeah, it is. Speaking of defying logic and reason, remember that term one of the subjects mentioned? Ionophrite.
Ionophrite, yes, described as a plasticine-like substance, part of the cyborg's brain.
Yeah, exactly. Sounds like something straight out of a science fiction novel. Ever come across that term before?
Can't say I have. Not in any scientific literature that I'm aware of. Could be a made-up term, something the subject came up with under hypnosis, or maybe it's a super specialized term from some top-secret research that hasn't made it to the public yet.
It's a mystery, that's for sure. And it makes you wonder, what other secrets are hidden in these transcripts? What other pieces of the puzzle are we missing?
That's the beauty of exploration, right? There's always something more to discover, more layers to peel back. And with each discovery, we get a better understanding of ourselves and the world we live in.
Yeah, that's true. But let's not forget the big question that's been hanging over this whole conversation. If these organic cyborgs are real, how do we make sure they stay under our control?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And that's what we'll be diving into in the next and final part of our deep dive.
Stick around, folks, because things are about to get really interesting. All right, welcome back, everyone. It's been quite a ride so far, hasn't it? We've spent the last two parts of this deep dive really digging into those accounts of organic cyborgs, the ones from those hypnotic regressions, remember. We talked about what they might look like, how they could be made, and even some of the, well, kind of unsettling ways they could be used.
And it's that last part, the how they're used, that brings us to the big question we left off with. Control. If these organic cyborgs are actually out there, how can we as humans make sure they stay under our control,
Yeah, it's a pretty freaky thought, especially after all the stuff we've uncovered. I mean, we're talking about creating something that could potentially be way smarter, way stronger than us. So what's stopping them from just turning on us? Like a classic sci-fi robot rebellion, right?
It's a valid concern. We've seen it play out in movies and books forever, but it's important to remember that intelligence doesn't always equal, bad intentions. It's how that intelligence is used, the values it's based on, that really matters.
So it's not about keeping them from being intelligent, but about making sure they're good intelligent. I don't know, it seems like a tough thing to do, programming morality into something that's part machine.
It's a huge challenge, definitely. And it would take a deep understanding of, both human ethics and the limits of artificial intelligence. It's almost like trying to write a code for compassion or build empathy into a circuit board.
Okay, but let's just say, for argument's sake, that we figure out how to create ethical AI. What are some practical things we could do to prevent, a cyborg uprising? Like, for real?
Well, there are a few possibilities. One idea is to build in limitations from the start, like a fail-safe system that could be activated remotely if things went wrong. A kill switch, basically.
Oh, a kill switch. Isn't that a little, I don't know, extreme, ethically questionable, maybe?
It's definitely a drastic measure, no doubt about that. And we'd have to be super careful with it. But think about it. Even simple machines like cars or power tools, they have safety features built in to prevent them from hurting people, right? So when you're talking about a cyborg with all its potential power and complexity, those safety measures would need to be, well, really, really strong.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
What about controlling what information they have access to? If they learn and adapt, maybe we could limit what they're exposed to. Like a giant internet filter, but for cyborgs.
Interesting idea. It's something that's being debated right now with AI, you know? Controlling information is powerful, but it also brings up questions about censorship, about their freedom to learn. Do we have the right to restrict a cyborg's access to knowledge? And honestly, wouldn't a truly intelligent cyborg probably find ways to get around those restrictions anyway?
True. They could probably just hack the system and download whatever they want. So what's the answer then? How do we make sure these beings, with all their advanced capabilities, don't become a threat to us?
Maybe the best approach isn't about limiting their intelligence or trying to control their every move. Maybe it's about fostering a sense of shared purpose, a common goal that aligns their interests with ours.
So instead of controlling them, we make them want to help us. But that only works if they can even think that way, right? We're back to that whole question of whether they can really understand human values like cooperation and empathy.
It's a risk, no question, and one that would require a lot of thought, a deep understanding of both what this technology can do and what it can't.
It's a lot, honestly. It makes me wonder, if these organic cyborgs really are out there, are we ready for what that means? Are we prepared for the challenges they bring?
That's the question we should all be asking ourselves. The accounts we've been discussing, whether they're real or just stories, they remind us that technology, even when it's beneficial, it can have serious risks too. We can't just assume it will always be used for good. We need to be aware, informed, ready to have tough conversations about the future we're creating.
So what's the takeaway for everyone listening? Should we all be, you know, prepping for a cyborg apocalypse?
I don't think we need to go that far, but it is important to understand what this technology could mean. Knowledge is power, right? And in this case, that knowledge might be what keeps the cyborg technology, if it does exist, from getting out of control. It's about making sure it's used responsibly and ethically.
It's been quite the deep dive, that's for sure. And I think we're all walking away with more questions than answers at this point.
And that's okay. The point wasn't to give everyone all the answers, but to get people thinking, to encourage critical thinking, and, to help everyone engage in informed conversations about where we're headed as a society.
Well said. Thank you everyone for joining us on this exploration of organic cyborgs. Until next time, stay curious and keep on diving deep.